Excellent. All right. All right. You guys know I'm like really, really loving this whole like AI thing. And the reason why, it's not because I'm just like, oh, she's so into tech. Well, I am, and I am intrigued with AI or whatever it is. But I love when we can have visuals for what we're looking at, because so much of how we perceive scripture or how we distance ourselves from certain things in the text is because of an image or an imprint that we have in our mind of what that is. And one of those big things is idolatry, right? Because many of us have awakened to the understanding that we should not be participating in national idolatry. So when we see symbols such as Christmas trees or Easter and, Halloween, we immediately like, oh, that has nothing to do with me, because those images and symbols have been the only thing that we see attached to this idea of idolatry, paganism, national worship from other nations, and what, of course, the Most High detests. But we've been duped again, unfortunately. And we go through, I think, when we read through the word, and that's the beauty of it, that's the love language of our Creator, that's the love language of Yah, to continually highlight to us that things are not as we perceive them. For instance, most of us grew up with the pitchfork, red devil with the horns. We're like, the devil's scary. And we literally connect the devil to anything that's ugly, that's disgusting, that's gross, that makes you frightened. But as we've grown up, many of us have learned that the adversary, based upon the text, presents himself as an angel of light, is beautiful, is cunning, is abundantly smart, knows Torah, has perfected disobedience in such a way that you'll be thinking you're being obedient and you're being disobedient. That's completely different from what we've been told to run away from. We've been told to run away from drugs and people who've lost their mind, but we don't understand how to resist people who present themselves as well, who present themselves as put together, who present themselves as knowledgeable and understanding of the things we're going through. We don't know how to resist those things because those things don't, on the surface, give us negative, give us bad, give us this vile, disgusting version of what we've been taught to perceive as wicked, evil, satanic. Right? So we see Satanism as people who worship the devil, but we don't see Satanism as people who disobey Yah. So we can have people who have a form of godliness, but not according to knowledge. And we will call those people, right? People who serve God, who just don't understand. But then we'll call the Satanist, right? Satan. We have been duped in so many ways. And so the beauty of the relationship that we have with the Creator through his word and through the indwelling of the Ruach and through seeking and striving to align ourselves with him is this beautiful ability to constantly have our minds and our hearts refined so that we see as he sees and we hear as he hears and we understand and his voice is clear. And it helps us, this is really cool because, in these modern days, talk about boundaries and all these things. It helps us to have healthy boundaries around us because remember, we're supposed to be in the world, not of it. But if I don't know what the hedge of protection should be, then my boundaries or my bounds may be expanded too far, thus literally bordering in idolatry in the midst of where we think, we think it's out here, but it's actually inside of our boundaries. And I think that's really interesting. So over the past few days, I'm on social media like most of you, probably not on all of them. I only use Instagram. I don't tick and talk, and I don't snap and chat, and I don't do the Facebook. it's just too much, but I am on Instagram, and I know those meta spaces kind of overlap, so I get some of the stuff. And I think it's interesting that the Most High, check this out, is allowing people to evolve with their leadership. He's allowing people to evolve with their leadership. And initially my brain is like, what's happening? What's going on? And this is just what I perceive. I perceive that, one, those who are really called are going to make the transition. And so for those of us who had to make transition, without our leadership making transition, that was a very difficult transition. And because the times have gotten a lot worse since many of us have made our transition to following Yah, I believe that the benevolence of Yah is going to allow some of this leadership to begin making transition or teaching things that is then going to either call the parishioners, the people who listen to them, to either reject them, right, and follow Yah, or for them to make the transition into that direction, because they're going to lose, if you will, their audiences or their ministries if they don't make that transition. I think Yah is very, very much being intolerant with people who don't want to make the transition. So now he has people who don't even really understand what they're saying things. And I'm like, that is so interesting. Like, I am completely like I said, baffled and praising at the same time, because I'm like, okay, but what about this? And yeah, I was like, hold on. I'm speaking to the hearts of the people. And just the same way that Balaam couldn't speak over the people when I didn't allow it, he even knew, like, hey, I got to say what I got to say, even though his heart wasn't even really there. He's like, I want that money. Can I go? Can I say it? Can I do what he wants? You see what I mean? But what was put forth was something that was supposed to edify the people. But then guess what the people do? The people then either make two choices. They're going to then do what their heart desires, or they're going to do what Yah's heart desires. So it's kind of where we are. So there were a couple of people who are relatively popular, who I enjoy their intellect. See, their intellect spiritually, but I enjoy their intellect, and I enjoy how they bring forth certain things, but their hearts are not aligned to Yah in their practice. But I've seen these people over the last few days of my own meta surfing, literally talking about idolatry. And I thought that was like really interesting, because how the adversary moves. And so I'm going to give you guys, and whoever else comes across this at whatever time they do, I'm going to give you guys what I think should have been given in that space unintentionally, because we're just in Jeremiah 10 dealing with idolatry. It's just random. Like my lesson, I told you guys last week, I already had my lesson written out from last week and we stopped halfway through. So it's interesting that I came across this information. But one of the things that I realize is that people will tell you the truth, but not tell you the truth, right? So the adversary says, did Yah say surely that this wouldn't happen like this? Play on words, right? So you can tell a person you're in idolatry, and then guess what you do? Then you create the visual. I'm just like a long story long for this visual. You then create the visual in their mind of what idolatry is. So you'll say, it's your music, it's your brands, it's your this. So now you go, okay, so then guess what people do? Because people do have a heart for Yah. They immediately start removing those things, never actually knowing that those physical aspects of what they perceive to be idolatry were linked to spiritual things that were happening internally. So then guess what? You clean the house only to make it more of a favorable environment for 7 times what you just took out of it. So then because you think now you've rid yourself from idolatry, and the adversary is like, yes. So when I throw in these other things, they'll have no idea. They'll not even be looking for them. Why? Because your inventory, your list has been constructed based upon a partial list of things that are the byproduct of idolatry. The physical things are the byproduct of a spiritual condition. It's internal, it's mental, it's emotional. So that's what happens when we handle the word without yielding to the ruach. You can see things, but then you can be unskilled at prescribing them. It's like a doctor who's a podiatrist who tries to give a diagnosis for brain damage. You've been to medical school, you can research, but you're not intimate, and you've not seen a sarcoma, or you have not seen this kind of aneurysm. And so you tell a person, oh, I've seen those before in books, that's no big deal. Then they go to sleep at night and don't wake up, because what you perceived from your position wasn't what a person skilled would have seen. I'm not saying I'm that person, by the way. I'm just going to let you all be skilled. by giving you the information, you building on it. So it's not going to be exhaustive. I hope that you guys look forward, further into it, go beyond and go further than I could have ever imagined with what I'm going to show you. But the image that you have on your screen is titled, "We Create Idols." And that's where we're going to really rest when we look at Jeremiah 10, because a lot of people have this thing that we do. And it's interesting how I'm telling you the download's happening as it's happening, how I'm going to move through this stack of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 stacks of information I have in front of me. It's going to happen kind of in whatever way the Ruach has it happen. But it's interesting how we seek to detach ourselves from the things we create. So the image that I created using, AI or whatnot was based upon this. The creation of idols. So you see two different pictures of the woman on this side, and she has an idol in front of her. Kind of looks like her too, right? And then on the left side, you have 3 women who are literally fashioning or constructing this idol of stone together. Why? So that they can worship it. And so if you don't leave with anything else, or if you turn it off here, because we all know I'm going to go much longer than this, the whole point of idolatry is that idolatry starts with creating or giving value to something that gives you value in worship. The issue with idolatry and creating gods outside of the living Elohim is that those idols are the imagination of the creator, the person. It's something they want. It's something they desire. So, and you all can do the same research. There's a lot of information out about understanding idolatry, especially from a psychological standpoint, which is pretty much where I'm going to go, because it's being created up here. We're going to see that in the text too. And so when it comes to idolatry, there's like steps and rituals attached to idolatry in different cultures. One that I thought was particularly interesting when I mentioned we like to separate ourselves from our idols. Part of the ritual, and one of the rituals in the ancient Near East attached to the creation of idols, was that once the idols were created, they were then cleansed. I went to Greece and I actually went during a festival, like a celebration, like a religious festival for Christians, Orthodox Christians, where they would take this like Jesus on a cross, and they would throw it into the water, freezing cold water. And the people would then go in and dive after it, and like the person that came up. So I'm like, in my mind, I have this like visual attached to this. And so in this particular ritual, this is an ancient Near East ritual, though, not the one I'm talking about. The people would then, after creating the idol, so after fashioning them, like the women did here, they would take them and they would cleanse them. They would bathe them in like running water or living water. And they would do this ritual where they would tie the hands of the person who fashioned the idol together with rope, and then symbolically take a wooden, it's like a wooden saw. They wouldn't do it actually. They would take a wooden saw and like symbolically go through a ritual of cutting off the hands to detach the person from being the one that created the idol, so that the idol could then have power. Very interesting, because we know inherently in our rational mind that anything that we create holds no power. So once the person fashions the body of the idol, then they invite the spirit of what they want to then dwell in the body. And in the same way, unfortunately, we do the same things with ourselves. So now I want you guys to shift we're going to just take a shift from these physical idols, which are the byproduct of something, to what we do to ourselves and what we do to our bodies, so that we can then, become hosts for who we think we should be, or who we want to be, what we put on, what we take off, how we dress up, what we buy, what we wear, how we style ourselves. That's also that the spirit of who we want to be can then dwell in our vessels. So then we can step into a room as confident, or we can step into a room as a boss, or we can step into a room as we dress it up, and then we welcome in, right, the spirit of however we need to exist in the space. Thus, I'm going to put out there that we're the idols. We're the idols. That's the issue. That's the issue in the text. That's going to be the issue moving forward. So the creation of the outward idol is so that that thing can then sit before us as a reminder. So there's this psychology of idolatry, right? And it's dealing with a more scientific term. So there's a thing called social identity theory. And so the particular article that I pulled up, it's literally a journal article offline, and it was written by Chen, Wang, and Ma, people who wrote the articles. And their point was the idea of branding influence by idol worship. So I'm not going to get into brands and all that, but you can take it where you want to after I say what I'm going to say. But the whole point was this idea of social identity theory, which directly connects to the biblical text. And the social identity theory is the passion and admiration for idols that we perceive to be what we are not, or who we want to be, or embody a version of ourselves that we want to see. Then we look to them. And so then what brands and what, let's say brands, what brands do is they dress up the idol in particular wear that says, okay, so if I had those lashes, that lipstick, that waist size, that bag, those shoes, then I will also be perceived like I'm perceiving that particular idol. That theory, social theory, is something that can be proven, translates all the way back to biblical times. When we were looking at last week, the text said that, guess what? You put the gold and you put the purple and you make them royal, your idols. You have to bear them. Why? Because that's how you want to perceive, because inside you know you're nothing. You know you don't feel like what you should feel like because you're being disobedient to me. So then what the adversary does is helps us to, through the ritual of idols, detach ourselves from the idol, but then also give the idol these attributes, and then we worship what we want to become. Thus, at the center of it, the idolatry is in our hearts. There's no power in it. You give it the power because that's what you desire. So women who desire children would then go to the god of fertility. And she would create these gods with these bulging bellies, right? Because she felt like if she surrounded herself with these images, then somehow the energy that she's putting into this would then transfer back to her, and then she would be able to bear children. So then if this God told her, you need to do X, Y, and Z, you start trying to then make this elaborate fantasy surrounding what you want so that you can receive it. You create this elaborate thing saying, okay, if I just had the right car, if I just had the right job, if I just had the right this, I would feel better about myself. Let me tell you something. Unless you just get rid of and give over the traumas and the idolatry and stuff to you, I can speak from a personal perspective that it doesn't matter if you drive the right car, if you have a brand new house, if you have all the outward things, if you know things, if you can dress in zit and fine linen and gold, it means nothing, because internally you will still be, check this out, you will try to use the Elohim of heaven and earth and your obedience to him to get what you really want in idolatry. You don't want him. You're obedient because you want the stuff that comes with being attached to him. That was our ancestors' problem. That was their problem. So the social identity theory is literally how groups happen and how people want to become a part of groups because it seems to unravel, or it seems to give them particular power. Somebody gonna be mad, but I'm gonna point to this idea of, I want to be a Hebrew and I want to be better than people. That's attached to the same level of idolatry. You want to be attached to Yah because it makes you better than other people, not because you want to obey him, because more people come into the journey of being a Jew or being a Hebrew and they seek to change Torah more than they want to obey it, because they don't want the Torah. They want the positioning and the power and the importance. They want their chance to be the oppressor. They miss that whole, you're the head and the tail and the flip-flop, meaning that you're going to show a righteous way of servitude that's going to draw people to Yah. You've now become the gatekeeper and the idol. And when people think about Hebrew, Israelite, Jew, any of that stuff, they see something that makes literally loving Yah detestable, and they'd rather stay right where they are. That is a problem. That is a problem. So then we've set ourselves up as idols in Yah's house, making us literally the image that people see, when what they're supposed to see in us is redemption and realignment with Yah. So then guess what you'll see online? You'll see everybody still talking about, this is the white man, and this is this, and this is what this is, and you got to know who you are, and this is identity. If they can't accept you, and you're like, where has Yah gone in all of this? And a true telling sign that Yah's not in it is the deviation away from the word of Yah toward every other type of thing. Now let's look at Bantu, and now let's look at this. And actually, the Hebrews wasn't even the Hebrews, and we didn't even have laws, and these are the white creation laws. And guess what? The whole thing begins to crumble because the foundation was idolatrous. They looked at what they could get out of being something versus having the portion and the inheritance of Israel, which is Yah, that through that would cause people to see them. So they throw big festivals and feasts, and they wear all the stuff and literally shame Yah in the process of it, because we create idols. Idols do not exist without human imagination and human creation. If you don't catch nothing else, and if you want to, you can turn it off now, because that's pretty much the gist of it. But for the people who like the journey, who like the journey, let's take the journey. Let's take the journey. All right. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 10. It's like, I thought we were done. No, we're just getting started. All right, Jeremiah chapter 10. Jeremiah chapter 10. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to read over what we read last week, because I think with what I said last week, because I kind of dealt more toward the outward, the out group, right? We look at the out group in social identity theory as the people who are doing things outside of where we are. So we don't like Christmas and Easter and all that other stuff. But I'm no respecter of persons, because the word is no respecter of persons. So now I'm gonna deal with the in group. That's us. We get ours, right? Yeah, it's like, okay, now here. All right, Jeremiah 10. Hear ye the word which Yah spake unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith Yah, learn not the way of the nations, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen, the nations, are dismayed at them, for the custom of the people are vain. This idea of customs we went over last week is this, the laws, statutes, and commandments. It's what it's literally the equivalent. It means the prescription to do something to preserve or to protect a base belief or value. So what they're doing to preserve their base belief and value, it's vain. Laws that protect something, meaning they have their laws and they have the things that they do that protect the world that you see them existing in. All right, he says the customs of the people. People, means relatives, citizens, families, their vanity. That means they're nothing. There's nothing in them. For one cutteth down a tree out of the forest, he just picks a thing that people are doing. The work of the hands of the workmen with the axe, they deck it with silver and gold, they fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them because they cannot do evil. You know why? Because you do the evil. They don't do the dysfunction. You created them. So then the recompense for the dysfunction is on you. Neither also is it in them to do good. No good's going to come out of it either. There's no function that'll come out of this dysfunction. So I talked about how in the same way we talked about the people who are out there and they're like the artists and the branding and Balenciaga and all these things, the practices behind them are evil, right? True. But then you get stuck. The same way that the in group, that's us who have this head where we think we're protecting this belief that we have, we're like, oh, but Christmas is bad and Easter is bad and all these things are bad. And you guess what? Only a few things. So then when people stop doing Christmas and Easter and fornicating, all of a sudden they're good. They don't look at their hearts. They don't look at their motives. They don't look at their deep, dark sins. They don't look at the shadow that exists within. They can't see it because I'm righteous before Yah because I've done the commandment since I was a child. I threw that in there so that your mind would immediately go to the man, the rich young ruler who goes up to Yehoshua and he goes, follow me. And he's like, oh, what do I need to do for eternal life? He's like, keep the commandments. He's like, I've been doing that. That's easy money. He said, all right, then sell everything you have. Guess what he did? He hit that idol. He was like, and said he went away sad. Because we can have the commandments, but still have idols. And when he hit that idol, He was like, yeah, that's as far as my journey go with you, yeah. And a lot of us have reached that place where it's like, I'm good where I am. And this is as far as the journey goes. And so then we begin to feel like Yah is not there. But you know what it is? Yah has said, follow me. And we stopped where we were comfortable. So the rich young ruler said, I can't follow you. I got to go do X, Y, and Z. So guess what? He went on his own path. So guess what? Yeah, then Yah is distant because you didn't go where he told you to go. Because he told, and what he told the disciples, very interesting, that parable, and I'm gonna get back to the text. When he told them, speaking of his personal idolatry and what he really wanted in his heart's desire, he said, you know what's sad about it? He said, I would have given it to him in this life and the one to come. He was like, he could have had it back. He could have had double. But because he couldn't see behind his own personal self-interest in that one moment, then guess what? He missed out on all of it because of his own personal idolatry. So that's just an example. So we talked about how people point out one part. So I'm going to take you, and the Bible program is Logos. Many of you who are enrolled at Roots Academy or on Patreon, you have access to this program. You can purchase it. I don't know what it costs now with how everything has changed, but yeah, you can go onto their website and check it out. It's literally, it says the Bible software up here. So this morning, when I was looking at this idea of idolatry and what people say are idols, I went online. I'm like, okay, what is idols? You Google, and I have words that I know for idols, but the Bible uses different words for idols. And this is why the Hebrew Bible, and this is why it's very important to know the language, because you might see like teraphim a lot or pesel, but you don't see that each individual word deals with how we interact with these idols. So I'm going to go and I'm going to scroll slow through the verses so you can go back and pause this and read it. I'm not going to read through each one, but in here, it gave a list of, and I'm going to scroll back down. It gave a list of the different types of ways, or I should say, all these words are translated as idols in English, but here are all the different words and what these words mean in Hebrew, which means that you can have a definition of idols and yours may not fit into what Yah's definition of idols are. So then you could be literally disobeying him, thinking you're doing something right because you've been given a snapshot of what idolatry looks like, because idolatry is this outward thing. It's not this inward thing, and it's not the interaction between those things. Although Exodus 20 is very clear. It's like, don't make it to worship them. But see, we think of worship differently because you would say, that's not what I'm doing. When I do that, that's not what I'm doing. And of course it is. When we worship, what are we doing? We are then giving reverence or putting something into a position of importance so that it changes something about our personal experience. So when we do it, we are. There's a lyric by Molly Music that was looping through my head while I was getting ready and putting this together. And he was like, he says, to adorn the Lord flesh. And I was like, ouch, ouch, to adorn the Lord flesh. He was like talking about how this adornment and this focus on the body and on the physical, that's your Lord, that's your God, that's your Baal. That's your husbandman. That's where you put your time and attention. And in doing so, you create a psychological experience that distances you from Yah, or you set up a way in worshiping Yah that allows you to have that thing. Solomon is a perfect example. Solomon had a heart initially toward Yah. Talk about the wisest man in the world. So guess what? Idolatry is not just for dumb people. Stop doing that. Stop saying people are so dumb because they worship idols. We smart. We are wise to do evil. Like the scripture says, oh, y'all smart to do dysfunction, but you don't know how to do good. Why? Because it requires something. Okay, so these are the words. These are the words. I'm gonna go to the next list because it's gonna give Bible verses, but here are the words for idol. So if it fits in any of these categories, we go down the list. Right? I love Torah because it's full of lists, because it's literally instructions for practical living, how we can look at things and say, let me do an inventory on my life and what I'm doing so that I can get closer to my creator. All right. So here's the words. And then on this next list, so this is the fact book. over here, and this is graven image. I typed in idol, but essentially it's going to deal with this graven image. And then it goes through and gives the verses. So let's look at the definitions, though, on this screen for these different types of idols. So you have a pesel, which is a divine image or an idol, something we're pretty, well known. It's this little image of something that has been given reverence. It's like heavenly. It's beyond this realm. All right. So then you have pasil, which is a divine image that's carved or hewn. Then you have this maskit, which is an image or a sculpture, but peep this, or an imagination or a delusion. So now it doesn't even have to be just something that is physical, but it could be something that is an imprint or has a picture in your mind, this thing that you've imagined or deluded, right? And it could be what you want. It could be something that you're striving toward. It could be this God that exists in your own head that is contrary to Yah. It could be a version of Christ that teaches disobedience. That can be an imagination or delusion not consistent with what is actually there and perceived. Interesting with imaginations and delusions, with an imagination or delusion, you will then reconstruct your physical, real environment to fit your mental delusion. Have people do it all the time, pretending you're somebody you're not. We have another one, not that I feel like this is an idolatry issue, but code switching. We know how to exist as different people in different environments. We create the necessary delusion of Eurocentric America in our head that tells us this is how we have to look, dress, and do our hair to operate in this world so that we can be perceived in their mental delusion in a way that's favorable. So you see how we can literally create, and then guess what? We put on something, we run down the inventory of the perception based upon the delusion that's happening in Eurocentric America's head. We can live in other people's delusions too. So, right? And okay, so then this other word, it means insignificant. So right here, and then it deals with pagan gods. So now it's looking at other nations and their gods. Then you get here, and you have this idea of other, later, or following after. In the case of idols or gods, it means another El other than the one true Elohim. Okay, so any other El. Then you move down. They have this one, and I'm not exactly sure what the lineup with this one, but to be girded. Then you have this word yaser, something made into the shape or an inclination or striving. You can set a goal, that's an idol. Hebraically, when something is set as a marker, it is literally marked out or put somewhere so you can see it so that you strive toward it. So if you are a Buddhist, you would keep a Buddha in front of you to remind you of Buddha mind. What does that look like? This calmness and this contentment. You put these particular images up so you can strive toward that image. Right? It's funny because we weren't thinking this as children, but we did that when we had an idol, right? That we had, whether it was Janet Jackson or Beyonce or somebody. What'd you do? You put up the images of the person on your wall because you wanted to look at them and you wanted to strive toward looking like, being like, dressing like, behaving like. And those images and those posters up on our wall were a reminder of how that particular person or what they were embodying made us feel, right? So it showed you what to strive toward. The other one is Selim. This one is interesting because we are made in the Selimnu, the likeness of Yah. So a Selim given over to anything other than Yah, who we're made in the likeness and image of, then it becomes an idol. So it's the idea that we are literally the physical representation of Yah. That's why Yah don't need graven images. You're supposed to be it. You're supposed to be the physical representation of his character by having relationship with him and being obedient to his laws, statutes, and commandments, right? You are the image bearers. You are the Selim. You are literally the figure and replica of his likeness. That's why when you get out of line, he has to chastise you because people see you as gods. So then people have to know that you're not God. You're not, you're supposed to be a representation so that I will whoop you so that people don't get me twisted. Because if people see people operating a way and they're supposed to be attached to Yah, they'll think that that's what Yah is telling them to do. So if they speak like Yah and they use Yah's words, but then they do vile practice, then the people will also do the same things, thinking that that is what Yah is prescribing as righteousness. So the Selem, we either will become in the likeness of Yah, we are in the likeness of Yah, so that's what we're disciplined as those created in that way. And then you have people who then want to become the Selem, the likeness or the statue or the idol or the figure or the replica of other people. That's why you got all these women walking around looking like Kim Kardashian. All these, like literally getting their faces and bodies reconstructed to look like what? A replica in the likeness and image of what the world has told us we should be looking like. Says, no, this is what you should look like. This is what's desirable. This is what, and guess what that does? It messes up everything, because now I'm not concerned with the internal transformation. I'll do the easy thing, which is the physical transformation, to then be perceived as more likable, more desirable, you know, a replica of what is wealth and beauty in this particular realm. And those things, if the internal especially is not in a place, you can do everything to the external and be detestable to Yah. Then you have the idea of abomination or an abhorrence. So then that's like, what is prescribed? What does Yah view this idol, any of these idols, as? They're an abhorrence. Why? Because they're everything opposite of what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be like me. And not that that doesn't make us beautiful. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, you know, all those things. We were the most beautiful people, and people saw the people who literally were with Yah, irregardless of race, creed, or whatever. There is a anointing that makes a person attached to Yah beautiful. You might even see a person like, I didn't really even think that person was attractive, but when they did what they did for Yah, all of a sudden, I don't care that they big. I don't care. You see how it just kind of washes out all of these other things? Okay, so then the other side of that is then to be an abhorrence to him. Yeah, it's like, you can have all of the beauty and all of the wealth, just like Solomon, but he became detestable to Yah. He became evil, and the record on Solomon is that he went down as an evil king in Israel. How? David was his daddy. He was the wisest man to ever live, because he did not align himself with the Creator. He aligned himself with the idols and the ways of the world. Okay, let's keep going. Another word for items is gilulim. That's just the idea of idols. Then you have an asab, which is an idol or a false god. The next one is something that is insignificant and vain, pagan gods. So anything set up in insignificance that doesn't lead toward Torah. It could be a teaching, it could be anything. If it's vanity, if it's just hot air, then guess what? It's idolatry, it's vain, it's an abhorrence to Yah. Okay, this one is interesting, because people are like, oh, I'm a believer, but I still celebrate Halloween. But they don't see Halloween in the text. Why? Because they don't put Halloween or monster over the place where this particular word is used. But the next one is stikus, which means an abhorrence, an object to abhor, a horror. Oh, we used to love horror movies, monsters and filth. That is idolatry. Why? It has zero representation of the likeness and image of Yah, and it literally goes into the mind, to the body, reproducing very, very graphic things that we shouldn't do. Literally, in most horror films, there is murder. There's not just killing, there's murder of people, often innocent people, in the delusion of a person outside of their right mind, which creates in us a unsafe world to live in. First of all, not that these people don't exist, but to then dress up or participate in horror and monsters is then, guess what? It is literally idolatry. Why? I want to be in the Selem of the monster. I want to be in the likeness and image of the monster or the dead cheerleader or the whatever it is. But those same children are not taught, the same adults are not taught to be in the likeness and image of their Creator. You've transferred the literal practice and worship from one thing to another, which is to make yourself in the likeness and image of what you love. But nobody would say they love monsters. Actually, I take that back. I know people who literally say, I love Halloween. I love it. Everything about it. Like, it's just magical. Yes, I know. All right. Let's keep going. You have breath, vanity, idols. We talked about that with another word, but this is another one. It's funny because it's hevel, which sounds very much like evil. The idea of a egel, which is a young bull or an ox. So this is that image that definitely we see a lot of times in like ancient Egypt, but that image, the pictograph, exists in the Hebrew culture as power and strength. And anytime something has an inherent power or strength, if you will, it is our natural inclination to want to worship that. So the sun has power, so we want to worship the sun. So the moon has power, so we want to worship the moon. The stars have this power, this intrinsic, thing that makes us feel something inside. So we want to worship that. Why? So we can get that feeling. I read a thing, and I told you I got this from a friend of mine where he says, I agree with the rabbis and they agree with me. So a rabbi said, somebody came to the rabbi and said, why doesn't God just destroy idolatry? And it says the rabbi chuckled and responded, well, people worship the sun, moon, and stars, and Yah's not going to destroy his creation because of idiots. Right? So when it comes to that, we look to the created things, right, instead of the creator. So then you have from those things, and we have Elohim. So that could be something that has power, or then guess what? Check this out. Or it can be something because the scripture says that ye are Elohim. Why would he say that? Because we're created in the likeness and image of Elohim with the power to create with our words, with our bodies. We make babies. We have the ability to expand in intellect. So the scripture says you are Elohim. I'll finish the passage so nobody gets this convoluted. Said, but you'll die like men because you're not going to stay connected to your source. You'll try to be higher, then you're not getting your power, right, from your source. So then how can there be other gods? Because through our creative power, we give over our power to other gods. So then we kill, we murder babies, we dress up, we create our own religions, we create gods, we use our intellect then to imagine these gods and what they are and what we're seeking. And it doesn't always have to be bad, right? So you could say something like Buddhism, where we seek peace and we want to not be self-gratifying and we want to do all these things. And Yah was like, no, I've made you to have pleasure. I've made you to do all these things within the confines of my Torah. So guess what? You're so wicked that you'd rather not have good than to serve me. You rather say, I just deny myself of everything. That is how messed up we are as humans. So then we'll create something, say, I'll just be better than the desires that Yah has given me. We do these things. So we'll transfer the power given to us as image bearers onto inanimate things or onto people. We'll give our power to other people. Yeah, I was like, no, I've given you the power. I've given you the voice. I've given you the gifting. But in our fear, Moses, I can't speak. I can't do that. I'm not like this person. And then guess what? Then we hollow out a person and then we want to shape them in the likeness and image of the task that Yah gave us. Then we want to pour into them so then we can be their gods. We do these things and then we get upset with the people when they don't perform like we want them to. And all along, Yah was like, you had no business. Yah literally almost killed Moses for saying what he couldn't do. He was like, whew, okay, you know what? Go get Aaron. And guess what Aaron did? Aaron jacked up and guess what happened? Moses still had to do what he had to do anyways. He still had to be what Yah called him to be. So much so in the text that it said that Moses became Elohim to Pharaoh. Why? He saw the power in him. I don't make it up. It's in the text. All right. So we can then transfer our power and people can see our power. And then when we are operating in our power attached to Yah, then guess what? Then it is the way of the empty and vain world to want to suck it out and use it for their own control, which means we have to keep ourselves directly connected to Yah. All right. Let's keep going. We did that one. Okay. Semel, which is the divine image, or to create a sculpture. We see that all over all the other cultures. Look at this one, ehad. It's an indefinite article, one, another, or first. So then you can be an idol by putting yourself first. Something as simple as that. So just be careful with what we're being taught and seen in the world, because yes, we should prioritize ourselves, but Yah should always be first. Put yourself first, sis. This your selfish season, sis. Do you, sis. Be careful, sis, so that you don't make yourself an idol, sis, and you forget the one who's supposed to be first, sis. We have to be careful with the message that we send, because a lot of times the intention is good, but the vessel receiving it is not in a proper place to receive it, and they'll take the message and do wicked with something that we may mean for good. I've been there. I've been there. Me, me first. All right. The idea of incense and altar. So in a lot of cultures, you set up incense and altar, scents and things. Why? So that they are a sweet savor to Elohim, to, let's say, even to Yah, right? In other cultures, of course, then you set it up to yourself. We have to make sure that everything we do and everything we cultivate leads back to Yah, whatever we bring into our space. Because I'm a big candle, incense, whatever, all that stuff. But then I remember going through a season very early in this walk. I think I've talked to you guys about like my little, who was the fine line between the occult and Torah? And so you're like, ooh, okay, let me find these scents. Let me mix these things together. And you go into the store this scent is supposed to help with, Now, I'm not talking about things like lavender that are calming, but then you get like, this is for this, and this is for this. And guess what? Then you attach that. That's like a placebo effect. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Where then you will then create something attached to a scent, and we all do it. It's not wrong. We do it on the other side, where we build up idols for our trauma. And then we actually serve that trauma. We give food to our trauma when we eat, right? To fit and fill those void spaces, or when we are abused, and then we gratify with food. That's feeding your idol that's attached to that trauma. You'd be like, I don't have it. Yeah, you have a trauma idol. Certain scents remind us of certain things in certain places. And sometimes they're not good. And we don't even know why we do them, because we exist mindlessly, which Yah tells us not to do. So then we'll burn incense or certain candles that remind us of things. Why? Because it reminds us of that. I remember early on coming out of keeping Christmas, very like the first year of me like finding out the Torah, but I like the smell of Christmas trees. So then I'm gonna burn Christmas tree candles. I don't have a Christmas tree. I just like how at least the scent made me feel. Right? So then I will then keep, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but my reason for doing it was because I wasn't having this physical thing. So then I was going to have scent that reminded me of it, because just the sensory impression was good enough. Just like just the music enough will get you ready for sex, right? Just the smell, just the feel will make you feel like something that you really can't have. We have to be careful of those things that we allow to exist as idols. All right. And be careful where you buy things from. I know I'm a big person, like, who made it? Where'd you get it? You can buy things sustainably sourced. And I'll tell you this too, because nothing is cut and dry and perfect. That doesn't mean I'm only going to buy from Hebrew people, because there's some Hebrew people I don't listen to their music and I don't buy nothing they make. There's the spirit behind it. And there's some people who don't have the full understanding, but do things, like it says, not knowing Yah, do things better than those who claim to. So that's not my shameless plug to go find people, because you'll bring something to your house and bring a whole host of other abomination to your house, buying something for somebody who got some fringes and a head wrap on. I'm just saying what I'm saying. They music too. You'd be better off just playing what you like. Just play what you like. That's all I'm saying. All right. Toeba, which is abomination or abhorrence, another word. And then we have, some of these words are going to be repeat because they're just different conjugations. So you have an abominable image. We talked about what abomination is. Then this, a fright or a horror. Just in case the first one was just you're not supposed to. Things that are fright and a horror, that's not a part of our culture. There's the fear. Yah has not given us a spirit of fear. Power, love, these are things that we should be showing and cultivating in our children, right? All right, evil, calamity, sin. Oh, these are now things people don't like to think of as idols. Injustice, deception, manipulation, lying. All of this is also an issue. Your sin could be your idol. So tear down your idols, right? Living in injustice, being unjust can be an idol, because the reason why some people allow injustice is because the injustice benefits them. That's idolatry. All right. Deception, deceiving people, manipulating people. Why? Because if I expose that I'm not perfect, or if I show the real parts of me, then guess what? You're not going to like me anymore. So I like to be liked so I can be worshiped. I like how you think about me. I like how you feel about me. I tell my sister girlfriend group, because obviously there's always somebody who has something to say about me. I'm like, what people have to say about me is not my business. That's not my business. Why? Because I existed in a very, very people-pleasing, wanting people to like me, and that creates idolatry. Because then if I constantly seek to make myself likable, and then people that are attracted to my likability and not to the truth of what Yah has me doing, then guess what? Then I'm an idol who also will be torn down, because then people do like they did very early on, like, a few years ago, people like, oh my gosh, read that folder. What is that you're wearing? How are you doing your hair? Is it okay if we, and I'm like, oh God, what are you doing? And even though that was my heart, because of the idols that people will build up about you because you don't want to tell the truth about you, then y'all be like, I got to show them that I'm in control of you. Even if I every day said, I have nothing without Yah, if people cannot detach themselves from the physical person, then Yah will humble the person. And it's beautiful when you get it. It's not good when you go through it. Why does Yah do it? So that whenever a person looks at you, they'll always see him, because they'll say, ain't no way raggedy old her do what she do like that, except for Yah. And I'll be like, you right. Finally, you get it. It's not the outward things. It's not the words. It's not what I say. You could go to the same school as me. You could live in the same house as me. None of those things have anything to do with who I am. It ain't on me, it's in me. And it's only in me when I yield to it. And that's the same thing for each of us. So if you live and you create this deceptive image of who you are, guess what? You will become a prisoner to that BS. You'll live in a fishbowl, and when you'll be so afraid to heal or to grow or to move on or for things to be exposed, that you will then become bonded and in bondage to a version of yourself that you may not even want to be anymore, but you're so afraid of somebody upsetting that apple cart. Can't live like that. That's the devil's playing ground, by the way. Waiting for somebody from your past to come along. Like, what if they come out and they make a video? Let me tell you something about that too. If you're Yah's, it won't matter. Yah will use the evil for good. So trust the process, be authentic, be who Yah called you to be in every phase. Don't live in deception. Don't try to create some false idea or identity for yourself because you're protecting other people. Let Yah get the glory in every single stage of your life, or you're going to find yourself in a space of idolatry. All right, keep going. You have the idea of indefinite art. Oh, we went through those. Oh, I missed one. Metal casting, to cast an image. A libation. Oh, we like to, this is my drink. Don't let anything become something that leads you into something else. This is to conclude an agreement. Move forward. I'm gonna keep moving down. We're right here. Sin, expiation. So this idea of sins and rituals, sin offering. Be like, I don't do offerings to sin. Yeah, we do. Cut it out. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. When we buy things for reasons that we shouldn't, like when you buy that dress that you know is going to be a thirst trap, like that is a sin offering. You're causing somebody, you're saying, I'm going to put this on me. So then somebody, you do it. What are you doing? You're literally dressing your idol to cause a reaction, to cause something else. It's a chain reaction. Okay. We have to be careful. That's not the only way. We do other sin offerings where we try to appease certain things. Now, this is a very interesting one. And this is coming off the top of my head. I could be completely off base with this, but sometimes we give gifts as a way to cover our sin instead of actually dealing with the actual sin. That's sin. Scripture says to leave your offering and go to the person, right? And deal with whatever that thing is. So that same principle can be translated to, don't just give somebody something to avoid having to walk through the difficult parts of relationship. Men do it and women do it, depending on what your love language is and so forth and so on. We want to say, okay, I'm sorry, but we don't want to deal with what we're sorry for. So then I'm literally making you into an idol and giving you an offering instead of dealing with the way that Yah told me to keep relationships intact. We have to be careful that we don't use our broken practices that we've learned or things that make us feel good as a way to go over Yah's law, because Yah's law and Torah is literally for us to be able to live amongst one another. That one hit me. Mine's not necessarily that. It's not that, but it's very similar, where it is, okay, well, then I'll just worry about me and I will appease myself and I'll let that person get it together. But part of relationship in life is to work things out with the person to determine what we should do. Should we move on? Should we create some different boundary? Should we recovenant? Should we put some new restrictions? Should we take this to Yah? That's what's going to re-regulate us, put us back into a proper place where we can use our bodies and our minds toward the kingdom. But when we stay in this dysregulated state, especially when through our hurt, anger, or whatever, we use ourselves as a way to try to get over the missing the mark of either other people or our own, it's dangerous. All right, let's keep going. To be king or ruler, that's a big thing, right? Everybody wants to be chief. It's like, Yah is king. Yah is the ruler. Keep him first. I don't know this one, Nehushtan. I'm not sure where that's from. I'll look back into that. Let me see. What is it giving me? It's not giving me anything. All right, and then you have Osev, which is a false god. Here are some other words that are similar. So graven images. Then you have Kibus, which is the pantheon. So a collection of gods where we have different idols for everything, right? Collected statues, collected things. The collection of things can be idolatry, stuff you can't break with. Hoarding is a form of idolatry, right? It goes back to a deeper place. How about this? Breach of faith or to lie or a liar. Why do we lie? To uphold an image. To uphold the idol. That's the whole point that we lie. What do we lie for? So that people don't perceive something as it is, so that the image stays intact. Then you have seraph, which is a kind of serpent or a kind of heavenly being, kundalini, right? You can begin to worship the parts of the body that really have a function and that are attached to things, and they become your God too. And then the construction, shape, pattern, model, or reproduction, right? That could be a bunch of things. The patterns in the sky, being amazed at the heavens. And then I had one that's not in here, but household idols. If you guys remember Genesis 31:19, teraphim. These are household idols. These are things that only happen in your house that really don't nobody else know. That's idolatry too. It was so much so that when Rachel, right, when she left her father's house, she put idols under her seat. And when her father came, he confronted her husband, said, hey, you stole my idols. He's like, I ain't took no idols. No. And then Rachel said, I can't get up because I'm in the way of a woman. I'm on my period. I can't get up right now. And she was sitting on the idols. And Jacob goes and he says, whoever has the idols, they'll die then. If anybody has them, they'll die. Curse her. And she dies, actually, giving birth to Benjamin. Household idols, things that we keep inside that nobody else knows, not even our spouse. That personal stuff, it'll kill you too. It's teraphim. Yah was like, all of it has to go. And it's not something, of course, where most of us, all of us, myself included, we have been houses of idols, houses of idolatry. And there's so many layers. But it's that uncomfortability, detaching from the feelings of things. Because sometimes it's not so much. So I had a person one time, so funny, where they're like, I'm throwing away all my shoes. And I'm like, do you really think the shoes are the problem? But I'm never one to like tell a person what Yah's not telling them. So I'm all for it, of course. But the reality, it wasn't the shoes. It wasn't the shoes. So I'm not telling people like, because it's easy for us to throw away the shoes. It's easy to throw away the bags. It's easier for us to, I'm saying, pray that Yah gets you comfortable enough that when he reveals to you the things that are in your heart, that we don't immediately suppress them and we deal with that uncomfortable feeling. And then when we sit with the uncomfortable feeling, we pray and ask Yah to instruct us on how to get rid of it, but not how to get rid of it temporarily, right? But how to rid ourselves of it, because in order to rid yourself of something truly, you have to replace it with something that's right. So if you don't know what to replace it with, that thing is coming back. That feeling is coming back. That's just like when you lose weight wrong. If you don't lose weight right, it's coming back and more. So we have to know what to do, what to fix. So a lot of people fix the exercise, but they don't fix the emotions. So then you exercise, you don't lose weight, then you get frustrated because you don't lose weight, then you go back to emotional eating and the whole thing falls apart. Same thing with spiritual practices. You say, okay, I'm going to read my Bible every day, but I promise you, I don't know if it's just a thing in the head or whatever. It seems like whenever you go into devoting to Yah, everything else ticks up times 1,000. And it's normally that our emotional and mental state that then shifts us away from what we really desire in our hearts. So then it's like, yeah, okay, how about in that, Yah, show me how to work on my emotional, my mental state so I can stay consistent to what I'm supposed to be doing to you and for you, essentially, to myself and for you. Same thing. All right, so that's that list. And then here are all the verses for each of these. So it's like, oh, it's just not Hebrew words. And so you have all of what I just went over. And I'm going to go through it relatively quickly because guess what? You guys can pause this later and we don't have to sit here and scroll for, 20 minutes while, everybody writes down all of these. I'm just going to scroll through them so that you have access to the verses. And why verses? Because verses are going to give you practical stories and information that definitions cannot do alone. You cannot live on definitions, cannot live on word studies. The beauty of a word study is that there are verses attached to it that give us examples on how to live, on what not to do, what people did, how Yah felt about, how they navigated through, how they stopped idolatry, what they did, so forth and so on. Okay, so that we have there. I'm already quite a ways in. So we're actually going to have a part 3. I'm not going to stretch it because I don't feel like I can get to the part that's at the end until we have enough information. So says, neither is in there to do good. For as much as there is none like unto thee, O Yah, thou art great and thy name is great in might. Who would not fear thee, O King of nations? He's like, after going through all of this and knowing what is real and what's not, and what are idols and what Yah does to idols, said, well, who would not be afraid? Because we're all kind of real messed up and you are to be reverenced and you are greater than all of these imaginations that we just read about, yet we would give reverence to these instead of you. What is our problem? What is our problem? He says, for to you does it appertain, for as much as among all the wise men of the nations and in all their kingdoms, there is none like unto thee. So the people that could create all this stuff and the beautiful imaginations, because the idols in some places are absolutely like mouth dropping. Like you're like, a human created that? You go to like places like Thailand, where they have these like giant gold statues and their stuff is still intact. Yet Yah was like, yeah, it's all good. You can build me a temple and whatnot. But if you don't obey me, I will tear that thing down. I don't live there. Right? Like how these people will preserve theirs and Yah will tear his down. So we'll get that when we come back, we'll get that balance between those two things. He says, but they are altogether brutish and foolish. And I want to get to this word, and this is where we're actually going to we're going to pause right here but they are altogether brutish and foolish. The stock is a doctrine of vanities. This idea of a doctrine is this word musar. Musar is a chastisement or a training, and it means to instruct. It's from the root word yasar. And musar is a discipline, a training or instruction. And then the root word yasar is a restriction, to set limits and to influence. It's funny that we use the term like influencer nowadays. It's all interesting how definitions literally yield action. So that he says this idea, because it's not attached to Yah and because it's animalistic and feeds a very, very base nature of human gratification, he said it's a doctrine of vanities. It's brutish. It's animalistic. It's on the lowest level that you could possibly operate. operate on. He's like, what you're doing is because of your lower self, if you've ever heard that term. It's because it's like, it's Bahema. It's like, because in you is what it is. He's like, I've called you to live elevated in my likeness and image, which gives you infinite and limitless possibilities toward truth and righteousness. So this idea that because they do something, it's called a doctrine of vanities. It literally means that they have then restrictions. There's law in paganism. There's law in idolatry. There's a way to look, there's a way to dress, there's a way to show up, there's a way to talk. We've already proven all of this, right? There's a type of celebration. There's certain idols you need for different things. You are obeying the law when you do these things. That's why it kills me when people say, I don't have to obey the law, but you'll do it for things that are nothing. That's what angers ya. That's the thing. He's like, it's not that you don't have the ability and to do it well, to set your mind on it and to love it and to do it and you'll exhaust your bank accounts for it. He's like, you will, you can, you do, but you won't do it to me. That's the problem. And Yah's not being petty or needy, because he's saying that those things are going to damn your soul. If you did things to me, I would increase you beyond that. And it will save your soul and your mind, because the people who do the idolatrous, vain things, their minds are not right. Their minds are not right. That's the problem. Their minds are fragmented, fractured, hurt, traumatized. That's why they're doing it. And that's all they have known to do. And then you follow after them. So then you take away my redemptive power for the wicked world when you pursue them, so that I have to destroy them to preserve you. He says that is vile. You are killing people with your behaviors because you're selfish. You are killing people because you cannot preserve your body for who I tell you to give it to. You are killing people because you cannot stop chasing after what images that are put on television. You're killing people because it's easier to mimic what you look like. It's easier to take your body. It's easier to go after the vain things that we enhance ourselves with than to really reach the depth that you need to following the Creator. He says it's literally, you are restricting and setting limits and influencing people, and you're restricting them from getting to me. That's why it's vain. Because they'll think if they put it on or they do it, that they'll then have what you have in you, and you have that because of me, but you won't show them me. You'll show them all the other stuff. Literally, musar is a discipline. You are disciplined in what you do. You like, we are wise to do evil. We're disciplined in destruction, but lack discipline in everything else. He says the stock, literally, the stock here is the tree, the wood, the stick. The whole thing is vain. It looks good. It looks real good, but literally it's about to fall over, because that's the whole point, right? Of this whole thing. Finish up where we were last week. So silver spread into plates from Tarshish. Like, y'all got silver plates. You got gold from the workmen of the hands of the founder. You got blue, purple clothing. They're all the work of cunning men, but Yah is the true Elohim. He is the living Elohim and everlasting King. And because you are idols and you worship idols, let me get that verse. Somebody like, you didn't call me an idol and I don't like you no more. Huldah. Go with me to 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 15. It says, I'm gonna go back a little bit. All right. Oh, goodness. Okay, let's go right here. Oh, I can't do that because it says 4. Gotta know what the 4 is there for. All right, chapter 17. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which is evil in the sight of Yah, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser. You can actually find this stuff in the British Museum if you ever look through their website. King of Assyria. This actual thing is actually on stone. And Hosea became his servant and gave him presents. Literally, they have the thing of him walking the presents. It's amazing. It's amazing. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hosea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. You can see the comparison. The king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 days. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah in the harbor by the river of Gozan in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against their Elohim, which brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods and walked in the statutes of the heathen. Learn not the way of the heathen, whom Yah cast out before the children of Israel and the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against Yah, their Elohim, and they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, and did the heathen whom Yah carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yah to anger, for they served idols. So this is why they're getting whooped, right? Wherefore Yah said unto them, ye shall not do this thing. Yet Yah testified against Israel and against Judah by the prophets, Jeremiah and others, and by all the seers, saying, turn ye from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I have sent to you by my servants the prophets. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like to the neck of their fathers, and did not believe in Yah their Elohim. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies, which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the nations, heathen, that were round about them, concerning whom Yah had charged them that they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of Yah their Elohim, and made them molten images, even to calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantment, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yah, to provoke him to anger. Therefore Yah was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. Also, Judah kept not the commandments of Yah their Elohim, but walked in the statutes of Israel. It's like your treacherous sister Israel, now you see it, which they made. And Yah rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. Can you see our condition? Can you see what caused it? For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king, and Jeroboam drave Israel from following Yah, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them, until Yah removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. Check this out, though, the replacement. This is the part that is interesting. Our sin causes us to literally not only be driven out, but then a false thing, because we were false. He's like, you're gonna live in your own sin. You're the false thing, then something false takes your place, thus now convoluting it. Then you get mad at the false. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Seraphim, and placed them in the city of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there, they feared not Yah. Therefore Yah sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the Elohim of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the Elohim of the land. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, hey, let's say it in this phrase. He said, carry one of them priests whom we sent away. Let them go and dwell there and teach the manner of their God to the pagans. Then one of the priests whom they carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel and taught them how they should fear Yah, which means they knew how to do it all along. So then that's how you get the blended practice of the Babylonians with the Israelites, because they taught them the ways to appease their Elohim, acting like they didn't know how to do it because they had set up idols. Now you have the land full of idols and all the nation of Israel carried away. We have to be careful. It says they literally were reduced to idols themselves. He's like, I see you're as worthless as what you worship. And when we look at it and we see people, we can perceive it, but we don't perceive it when it's on us. We have to be careful that we do not become idols to people, where we become a place where they can exercise their blended worship, where they can have parts of us and thinking that they're also in that same time serving Yah, where we used to use this term back in the day, where we kill our witness because we don't represent what we should be representing. And it's not a one-time work, it's a life work. It's something that we have to do because the adversary wants us to be like him and set ourselves up above Yah. He wants us to be in a position of idolatry so that we can be destroyed. It is serious business. Idolatry is serious business to Yah. Whether we want to believe it or not, it's serious business to him. So much so that if he's doing all this to what he calls the apple of his eye, then how much more so than to us to draw us to him. We cannot give Yah whatever we want. And we cannot show up however we want. We have to make sure that in every way, not only do we show people Yah, but we don't take his name in vain. It's literally, that's what all this boils down to. You got a commandment, a commandment, 10 commandments. And that commandment then has all of this information tacked on. Idolatry, vanity. Why? Because literally, if you take my name in vain, then you misrepresent me. You misrepresent my character. And now you have made yourself one to contend with the living Elohim. Says, now, it's one thing to be afraid of somebody that can destroy your body. It's another thing to buck bad with somebody that can destroy your body and put your soul into utter separation and damnation. Gotta be careful what we do. We have to be careful. And it's not so much of perfection. My baby asked me, she said, so we have to be perfect? I said, no, and I keep saying we have to be perfecting. And the difference between perfect and perfecting is no one is perfect but Yah. So then we have to be attached to the one who is set apart, who is holy, who is perfect, and be put under his oversight to be in a perfecting process. The difference between the person who perishes and the person who makes it is the spirit of David. It's a perfect example. Literally, why is David's account wiped clean? Except for in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Literally, that's what the text says. You know why? Because anytime he was right, he put himself under, anytime he was wrong, he put himself under the examination of the judge to be made right. To be made right. And you know what? Because that is the end of this, I think we're just going to end here. We're going to end chapter 10. We're not going to come back to chapter 10. If I missed something, if there was something you're like, oh, I was hoping you get to that, we can do that on Patreon. I'm going to go down to this part because I don't want to leave another week without getting to this part. So he says, go down to verse 23. He says, oh yeah, I know that the way of man is not in himself. Let me make sure I share my screen because I know somebody's like, your screen's not shared because I didn't see it come up. Verse 22. Verse 23, it says, oh yeah, I know the way of man is not in himself. So I can't create idols, right? To find the way toward who I am because I'm not me. I'm creating the likeness and image of Elohim, creating anything outside of, going toward anything or trying to manufacture something else It doesn't work. The way of man, the path of man is not in me. It's definitely not in me when I have wicked inclination, sin, and everything else. I'm not going to find righteous searching in me. I can search to get and have, with Yah's help, to remove all the stuff that's not of him from out of me, but I'm not going to find the way to him in myself. So know thyself. Well, yeah, be intimate with your evil inclination, so you know to always yield that self to Yah. Know what you're made of, so then you have a better alignment with the necessity and the need for Yah and his righteousness. Yes, but searching out and going to yourself, that's not lech lecha. The whole point of lech lecha, go inward, is so that Yah can show you all the things in you that don't align with him, so that you can have a clear path back toward him without all the fuzzy stuff that has you doing all these other crazy things. Okay. He says, it is not in man that walketh to direct his steps. He's like, you can walk, but you can't direct your steps. You got feet and you can go places, but your heart and its inclination is never going to lead you to Yah. That's not what your flesh wants to do. You have to have a restored authority within, so that the reins of your mind work the reins of your feet, and the reins of your mind gird up the loins of your heart and everything else, and lead you literally to Yah. He has to be in control of that. You won't control the reins, right? If you let an animal, if you ride a horse, you let a horse do what a horse want to do. Horse is going to do horse things. If you let a human do what humans want to do, humans are going to be doing human things. We have to have a governor. We have to have reign. So then this is what Jeremiah says. He says, oh yeah, correct me. This is very interesting. The word that we saw, yasar, at the beginning, that's the idea of restrictions, set limits and influence. He calls on the same thing that we use in a negative back to Yah. He says, Yah, yasar me. Set limits and restrictions and influence me. It's interesting. We say, I don't want rules. I'm not under the law. I don't need that anymore. That's old. And the prayer of the prophet for the people was that Yah correct him, but not just correct in chastisement. He was scared of that. He said, no, set limits for me. Influence me, restrict me. Instruct me, train me, discipline me, lest thou bring, but with judgment. The idea of judgment here is not this idea of only God can judge me. No, what he says is find fault in me, right? That's the idea of correct me, yasar. And then he says shafet. The idea of shafet is a forensic cause. Literally, like you've seen like CSI. He's like, literally inspect me. Look at my crime scene. Look at the way I've constructed my life. And he says, and do it according to your law, which constantly seeks, don't let anybody tell you different. The law constantly seeks to bring us back into right relationship. The law didn't seek to kill us. It was our disobedience to the law that brought death. The law was seeking to bring us back into right relationship, but we'd rather have the idolatry and the images that we create than the relationship with the creator. He says, with your judgment, bring me back into the right relationship with your law that never increases its standard. You know, Yah's standard has never changed for us. The punishment don't raise up, or he doesn't change. It's very consistent. And it's always with love, with the intention to bring us back to him. Search me out, try me, try the reins of my mind, judge me, show me, give me an account. We do it all. If we want to be better, we will. If you were trying to play a sport and you want to be a good shooter, you would get a person who is trained in shooting and you would say, correct me every time I shoot wrong. Correct me every time I dribble wrong. Correct me every time my form is wrong. Why? Because I want to be a good shooter. Our same heart and disposition has to be to Yah's judgment. We have to be able to say, Yah, I'm supposed to be in the likeness and image of you. Correct me and show me in gentleness and kindness, because that's what real judgment is. You don't get punched in the face when you shoot a ball wrong, right? It's like, no, right here, that wasn't of me. Now that what, and you're like, oh, okay, I want to be like you. So then that's okay. If a person wants to wear their hair like you and you say, oh, well, I part my hair right here and they part over here, you're like, no, move that part over. Like, oh, okay. Why? If you want to look like me, if you want to do the things I do, you're going to watch me do them and you're going to ask me to correct you when you don't do them like that. or you're not going to get the end result. It's just what it is. He says, oh yeah, correct me, but with judgment. And then this part, not with your anger, lest you bring me to nothing. That's not what we're asking for, because the whole idea is if I stay in a state of idolatry, if I don't deal with this internal idolatry, I will become nothing like the idols. I will become nothing. So he says, pour out thy fury, though, upon the nations that try to get me to be this way. They don't know you. I'm trying to know you. And pour it out on the families that don't call upon your name. Save that for them. Don't reserve that for me. For they have eaten up Jacob. They have done this to us. And they've devoured us. And they've consumed us. And because of our decisions to go toward them, they have made our habitation desolate. We want to be like you, yeah. We don't want to be like the versions of ourselves that exist in our heads or the versions of you that exist in our heads. Don't let our destruction make us desolate. Hallelujah. That's the end of Jeremiah 10. That's how we're going to end Jeremiah 10. That's how we will. I think that covers it. We don't have to have a part 3. I thought we would, but I think that's gonna conclude it. All right.